Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something, well, it feels bigger than just better video calls. We're diving into Google Beam.
Right. It's pitched as this evolution of Project Starline.
Exactly, taking video conferencing off the flat screen kind of into a shared space. The goal seems to be these really lifelike digital interactions.
Lifelike is the key word. And crucially, no headsets. It's about creating a genuine sense of presence, making virtual meetings feel, well, more like actually being there.
Okay, so our mission today, unpack the tech, look at what it means for businesses, and get a feel for what using it might actually be like.
Let's do it.
So what's the magic behind making it feel so real? What's the core tech?
Well, it really boils down to a couple of incredibly sophisticated things working together. The first big piece is something called AI-driven volumetric video modeling.
Volumetric video, okay, so it's
Right.
not just a flat image.
Exactly. Forget flat pictures. Think of the AI building a complete 3D model of you in real time.
Okay, hang on. How does it actually do that? Go from my normal webcam feed to a 3D me?
Good question. So AI algorithms are analyzing that standard video feed, but they're looking deeper. They capture not just what you look like, but your depth, how you move, even subtle things like the texture of your clothes.
Wow. So it's reconstructing you in 3D as you're talking.
Precisely.
And this isn't like some clunky, laggy avatar we sometimes see.
No, not at all. The performance they're citing is pretty impressive. 60 frames per second and accuracy down to the millimeter level.
Millimeter level. Why so precise?
Well, think about facial expressions,
Right.
right? Small gestures.
Yeah.
That level of detail is absolutely vital to capture the nuances of how we actually communicate naturally.
Okay, that makes sense. And the processing power for this, it must be huge.
It is. And that's where Google's custom tensor processing units, their TPUs, come in. They're built specifically for this kind of real-time, heavy-duty AI work.
Ah, right. Their own chips.
Yeah, and that also helps the system scale up effectively.
So this is a massive jump from just, staring at flat squares on a screen. You can actually sense the space between people.
That's the idea.
Hmm.
It gets past that core limitation of 2D video where you lose all sense of depth. That loss is a big part of why video calls can feel so draining, actually.
Yeah, the zoom fatigue thing.
Right. So you have this 3D model. The next step is how you see it. And that's light field display technology.
Light field display. Okay, that sounds complex. And you mentioned no headsets.
Correct. No headsets, no special glasses. It's Google's proprietary tech. It projects these 3D images so you can see them naturally from different angles.
How does that work? Is it like a hologram?
It's sort of like that, yeah. Imagine the display isn't just showing a flat picture, but it's actually directing light in a way that recreates the object, the person, in 3D space in front of you.
Okay, now, eye contact. That's the holy grail of video calls, isn't it? Does this actually solve that?
They claim it does. The light field display is specifically engineered for realistic eye contact. Plus, you get true depth perception and parallax effects.
Parallax, meaning?
Meaning, if the person on the screen shifts their head slightly, your view changes naturally, just like it would if they were physically in the room with you.
Okay, that would feel more real. And it does this with high resolution, wide view.
Yeah, high-res output and a pretty wide field of view, too, around 120 degrees.
Yeah.
It all adds up to that feeling of a shared space.
And just not needing a headset, that alone must make it easier for people to actually use it and be comfortable.
Huge advantage. It skips the whole learning curve of putting on gear and avoids the physical discomfort some people get with headsets over long periods.
Right?
And complementing the visuals, you've got a pretty advanced camera and audio setup, too.
6 cameras you mentioned. Why so many?
Well, those 6 cameras are positioned strategically. They capture you from multiple angles simultaneously.
Ah, for the 3D reconstruction.
Exactly. You need those different viewpoints for the AI to build that accurate volumetric model. They're using high-def sensors to grab as much detail as possible.
Makes sense. And the audio, is it just better microphones?
It's more than that. It's spatial audio.
Spatial audio, like surround sound for a video call.
Kind of. It uses a multi-microphone array and multiple speakers. So if the 3D image of the person is on your left.
Their voice sounds like it's coming from the left?
Precisely.
Oh.
It's subtle, maybe, but it's another cue that really reinforces that feeling of being in a shared physical space. Plus, it has automatic calibration. It adjusts itself to the room's acoustics, which simplifies setup and keeps the sound consistent.
That's clever. Okay, another feature that jumped out was the real-time translation. English and Spanish, to start.
That's what's available now, yes.
Yeah.
But the really interesting part isn't just the translation itself.
Oh.
It's that the system tries to preserve the speaker's original vocal qualities, their tone, their pitch, even the emotional nuances.
Seriously? So it translates the words and keeps the way they sound? How?
Leveraging Google's pretty advanced AI and natural language processing, the goal is high-fidelity translation with very little delay.
Wow. So you're not just getting the information, but also the intent behind it, even across languages. That could be huge for global teams.
Absolutely. Imagine smoother conversations, better understanding, and they have big plans to expand it.
More languages.
Yeah, by 2026, they're aiming for Mandarin, French, German, and other major ones. That really broadens its potential impact globally.
Okay, that's a game changer for international business. So let's shift to the practicalities. What do you actually need to run this? Hardware, setup.
Right. You need a dedicated beam unit itself. That's the hardware integrating the display, the cameras, the audio system.
A big monitor setup.
Sort of, yeah.
Hmm.
But interestingly, they've partnered with HP to create more compact versions. The idea is to make it easier to fit into a typical office space.
Ah, okay. Not some massive installation.
Hopefully not, but you definitely need a solid internet connection, high speed, low latency. They recommend at least 100 Mbps for it to work optimally.
Makes sense with all that data flying around. And software. Does it play nice with existing tools?
Yeah, that's key. It's designed for compatibility with Google Meet and Zoom right out of the box.
Good. So companies don't have to rip and replace everything.
Exactly. And Google's also providing APIs, application programming interfaces.
All right.
That lets developers build custom integrations if they need to.
Okay, so the tech is fascinating, but let's talk business. How does this actually translate into benefits? What are the real implications here?
Well, the potential to really shake up remote collaboration is probably the biggest one. Think about meeting productivity.
How so?
Early pilot studies, according to our sources, reported something like a 20–30% increase in perceived productivity.
Wow. Why? Just because it feels more real?
Partly that, but it seems to be about cognitive load too. Because Beam gives you those natural spatial cues, your brain processes the interaction more like an in-person meeting. It's less mentally taxing than trying to interpret flat video feeds all day.
Ah, so less Zoom fatigue because your brain isn't working as hard to fill in the gaps. You're getting eye contact, gestures.
Exactly. All those nonverbal signals we rely on. They're crucial for building rapport, for negotiation, brainstorming, just basic team cohesion. This could make hybrid work feel a lot more, well, connected.
Less disconnect between remote and in-office folks.
That's the hope, making it more inclusive.
And then there's the travel aspect, reducing business trips.
Huge potential there. Think about the cost. One international trip, say transatlantic, they can easily run a company, what, $5,000, $10,000 per person?
Easily.
If Beam makes even some of those trips unnecessary, the cost savings could be massive.
And not just cost, right? There's the sustainability angle, too.
Absolutely. Fewer flights means a smaller carbon footprint. That aligns perfectly with corporate ESG goals, environmental, social, governance. Companies are paying a lot more attention to that now.
Did the pilots show anything there?
Yeah, Salesforce apparently reported about a 15% reduction in their travel-related emissions during their pilot program with Beam.
That's significant.
It is. And also, the fact that these HP compact units are being positioned as, cost competitive with high-end VR setups,
Yeah.
that suggests it might not just be for giant corporations. Maybe SMEs could access it too.
That accessibility is key. And the partnerships seem crucial, HP, for the hardware, the integration with Meet and Zoom.
Definitely. Working with HP brings that hardware manufacturing know-how, making sure it's reliable and fits into offices easily.
Right.
And integrating with Meet and Zoom just lowers the barrier to entry massively. People are already using those platforms. Plus, that open API strategy.
Letting others build on it.
Exactly. It encourages third-party developers to create custom tools, expand the ecosystem. It's a smart play.
And looking at the companies involved in the pilots, Deloitte, Salesforce, Citadel, NEC, Duolingo, even a healthcare system like Hackensack Meridian, that's a really diverse group.
It really is. It shows this isn't just for, say, tech companies. It highlights the potential across finance, consulting, education, healthcare. Pretty broad applicability.
So strategically, where does Beam fit in this crowded market? How's it positioning itself against, say, Microsoft or Meta?
Well, the big differentiator, the first mover advantage really, is that headset-free approach combined with the sophisticated AI.
Right, Microsoft Mesh, MetaQuest Pro.
Yeah.
They all need headsets.
They do, and that can be a big hurdle in a business setting. Comfort, setup, maybe even just the look. Google seems to be deliberately targeting the enterprise market.
Not trying to compete head-on with VR gaming platforms.
Exactly. It feels like a focused strategy. Avoid the consumer battles, solve problems for businesses.
Makes sense. What about the user experience? What are the early adopters actually saying?
The feedback seems pretty positive overall. People are talking about a noticeable jump in meeting engagement, maybe around 40% improvement reported.
40%, that's huge. And they link that
to the natural eye contact and the spatial awareness, feeling more present, less detached than on a standard video call.
And the Zoom fatigue point.
That comes up a lot too. A significant reduction in that feeling of exhaustion. The lack of a headset and the intuitive nature seem to make it less draining.
Yeah, wearing a headset for hours. It can definitely feel isolating from your actual surroundings.
Right. And because Beam apparently captures those subtle nonverbals, better the small expressions, the posture shifts users feel it helps build trust and rapport. That's critical for important discussions, negotiations, things like that.
So it feels more human.
That seems to be the consensus.
Yeah.
And the setup is reportedly quite straightforward, kind of plug and play with automatic calibration.
Accessible even for non-techie people.
That's the aim, though. Realistically, some initial IT help for getting the network side optimized is probably still a good idea.
Sure. Of course, it can't all be perfect. What are the downsides or challenges people are pointing out?
Well, cost is definitely one. Even if it's competitive with high-end VR, the upfront investment for these dedicated Beam units is still substantial. That could definitely put it out of reach for smaller companies initially.
Okay, the price tag. What else?
Space. The dedicated units, even the compact ones, still need a certain amount of physical space. That could be tricky in smaller offices.
Right. Real estate is always a factor.
And, while it's designed to be intuitive, there's probably still a bit of a learning curve. People are so used to 2D video calls, adapting to a 3D interface might take some adjustment for some users.
Fair enough. Habits are hard to break. So maybe we can draw a clearer line. If you compare Beam directly to, say, Microsoft Mesh or MetaQuest Pro, what are the key contrasts?
Okay, let's break it down. Display tech. Beam is headset-free light field. Mesh and Quest Pro require AR or VR headsets. Big difference right there.
Okay. Setup.
Beam is probably moderate. You need the unit, but no headset fuss. Mesh and Quest Pro can be more complex, needing headset setup, maybe external sensors.
Got it. What about translation?
Beam has it integrated, English-Spanish now, more planned. It's a core feature. The others might have some support, but it seems less central, maybe more basic, or just within the headset environment.
And how people look. The avatars.
Huge difference. Beam uses that AI volumetric modeling for realistic 3D representations. Mesh and Quest Pro use more traditional VR-style avatars, which, can sometimes feel a bit cartoonish or less nuanced.
Right, the uncanny valley problem.
Potentially. And eye contact Beam is specifically designed for. That's still a major challenge, or just not possible with most headset systems.
Okay. Enterprise integration.
Beam seems strong there. Meet, Zoom, open APIs. Mesh is naturally tied very closely to Microsoft Teams. Quest Pro still feels more consumer-focused and deeply integrated into enterprise workflows.
And cost overall.
Beam is likely a moderate to high enterprise hardware cost. The others, when you factor in headsets for everyone, potential infrastructure software licenses, the total cost of ownership could easily be higher.
So summarizing Beam's edge, it's the headset-free ease of use, the AI-driven realism, good enterprise integration, and the translation feature.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. It's positioning itself as maybe a more practical, professional solution compared to the headset-dependent alternative, which often feel more geared towards tech enthusiasts or specific VR applications.
Okay. Looking ahead then, what's on the roadmap for Google Beam? What are they aiming for next?
They've got some pretty ambitious goals. Multi-user sessions is a big one.
So more than just one-on-one calls.
Exactly. Enabling larger virtual meetings within the Beam environment. They're targeting mid-2026 for that.
That would be a significant step up.
Definitely. And expanding that real-time translation, adding more languages, especially focusing on Asia and Europe, to really boost its global appeal.
Right.
And interestingly, they're also looking beyond the office, exploring consumer versions.
Consumer? Like for what?
Things like telehealth, remote education, maybe even connecting with family remotely. That could potentially happen around 2027.
Wow, so really broadening the scope from just business use.
It seems like it. They're also planning to use more generative AI, improving avatar realism further, maybe adding smart meeting summaries, enhancing accessibility.
Using AI to make it even smarter.
Right. And crucially, they seem focused on trying to bring the cost down over time through those hardware partnerships, making it more accessible to SMEs, schools, etc.
That accessibility point keeps coming up.
Mhm.
But what hurdles might they face trying to achieve all this?
Well, the challenges we mentioned earlier could persist. The initial cost, the space requirements, those could still slow down adoption.
Competition too, presumably.
For sure. Other players are moving into spatial computing. Think Apple with Vision Pro. Even if its focus is different right now, competition will likely heat up.
True.
And that fundamental reliance on excellent internet connectivity, latency issues in some areas could still be a bottleneck for global rollout.
Always the infrastructure dependency. All right, so wrapping things up, what's the big picture here? What's the core takeaway about Google Beam?
I think it represents a genuinely exciting potential leap in how we communicate remotely. It's this unique blend of AI, advanced optics, spatial audio, all aimed at creating a sense of presence that current video calls just can't match.
More natural, more engaging.
Exactly. And its clear focus on solving enterprise problems, combined with smart partnerships and integration strategies, makes it a really strong contender to actually transform remote work.
The promise of better productivity, lower travel costs, and just stronger connections for distributed teams. It's definitely compelling.
It really is. And yeah, there are challenges, costs, adoption hurdles, but the potential for Beam to fundamentally change how we interact professionally, maybe even personally, feels quite significant.
It really does leave you thinking. If remote communication becomes this lifelike, how does that really change things? Not just business, but our personal connections too. What new opportunities or maybe unexpected problems arise when our digital presence feels almost real? Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for this deep dive today.